So maybe you haven't thought about prepping, or you don't think it's important, or maybe you are a prepper, but you're so fully in the midst of it that you might have overlooked some very simple things. So, first of all, I want to start off with a joke. Now, it's not really a joke, it's not really funny. But I remember as a kid, my mom, I always say, "Mom, tell me a joke." And one of her jokes when we lived in Alaska was, okay, there are two men, and a grizzly bear approaches them. And really fast, one of them starts putting on his sneakers and tying up his shoes. And the other man turns to him and says, "Do you think you're going to outrun a grizzly bear?" And the other man says, "No, I just have to outrun you." So it's not funny, it's morbid, right? But I've been thinking about that joke lately. But instead of trying to outrun another person, think of those two people as both being versions of yourself. There's the one who's tying up the sneakers, ready to hit the ground running, and the other one who's just like, yeah, I know the bear's coming. It's going to happen. Okay, so I want you to think about yourself as both of those two individuals. And another thing I was thinking about was how often we try to say it's too expensive, it's inevitable, all these things. What are the chances something's going to happen? What do we don't know what to prepare for. You might be preparing for an earthquake, but it might be a tsunami. You might be preparing for economic collapse, but it might be job loss, or it might be this or that, or it might be solar flares, or solar interference, or loss of the grid goes down. So there are so many different things. And a lot of people are just preparing for day-to-day personal shtf. There could be loss of income, or just inflation, things like that. I want to take a step back and say, like, this isn't even prepping. What I'm going to give you is pre-prepping. It's before you feel like you have to put all the money and energy into these advanced serious preps. Here are some things that you can do now that would help you for many different scenarios. You wouldn't even have to call yourself a prepper, but these things would definitely help you to be prepared. Okay, so there's 10 things I'm going to go over. The first one is to maintain your vehicles, and that means tune-ups. You have a small crack in your windshield, get it repaired before it becomes bigger. All of those types of things. You get your vehicle serviced. If you have skills on how to be a mechanic, take care of things as they come up. Those of you who are your own mechanics, you help other people before you help yourself. Make sure that you are servicing your own vehicle. It's like that when the air mask comes down, you're supposed to put yours on before you put on one for somebody else. So make sure that you're taking care of your own stuff. So with the vehicles, keep them fueled up. That's one of the shorts I had on there. Was this easy hack is just never let your gas go or your fuel go below 50%, half a tank. So I remember a time when I was going to go visit my grandma and my grandpa when they were still alive for Thanksgiving. And I don't know what was going on at the time, but there was like no gas. And I coasted, because back then I had faith in fumes. I coasted to my grandparents' house really on empty to get there in time for Thanksgiving. There have been times when there was not enough gas, or the fuel was so expensive. You could be quarter of a tank, and then something happens. Could be that you get lost. Could be a lot of different things. There could be a road shut down. I remember on I-5 once, there was a horrible catastrophe, and I was stuck one time for 5 hours on I-5 and one time for 3 hours. And if you're on less than half a tank, you're not making it home. So And you could be many miles from home if that were to happen. So keep all your vehicles fueled up. Make sure that your tools are fueled up too, and that you have, whatever you need for them, whether it's oil or whatever. Things like, you know, any kind of tool, could be even like lawnmowers, things like that. Make sure that things are repaired and tuned up. Also, you want to make sure that you have, and talk about vehicles, bicycles, like even just bicycles that, you have the things maybe to fix them, that they're in working order. And if you don't have just a mountain bike, maybe you should get one. Also, things like, I know this sounds silly, roller skates, wagons, wheelbarrows, things that make work and effort in going from place to place easier with less effort, I think would be very good. Let's hope we never go to 15-minute cities, because you're going to really want a bicycle in that case. Really free up your ability to go places. So hopefully that never happens. Number 2 on my list is this is just like basic hygiene. Keep all laundry and dishes, keep all laundries and dishes cleaned up. So if something was to happen and you haven't done dishes in a while, and your sink is overflowing, and you haven't done your laundry, and you don't have a clean towel, and all of a sudden your electricity's turned off, or you don't have water, whatever it happens to be, even if it's like you just can't pay your power bill, or there's a windstorm and you don't have electricity for 3 days, you need to make sure that you're staying on top of laundry, dishes, and that kind of stuff. It wouldn't hurt to have also some like paper towels, extra things like that, extra dish soap. If you're having to wash things by hand, then you have an easier time of it. So paper plates, having things like that around is helpful, but just really, if all you're doing is stay caught up on your household chores, even things like vacuuming and sweeping and that sort of thing. If you're going into an shtf situation, if you don't have to dig yourself out of a mess, then that will put you ahead. Number 3 is to take care of yourself. I'm talking about hygiene. I'm calling it the 3 H's. The 3 H's, including hydrate, like take care of your basic health, right? So hydrate, don't go around starving. Like they always say, don't go to the grocery store hungry, right? Well, if you're hungry and thirsty and tired, and then your car breaks down 50 miles from home, you're putting yourself at a disadvantage. And then if something else was happening at the same time, those types of things would compound the situations. So stay hydrated, make sure that you're getting the right kind of nutrition, hygiene, and general health. So if you are, walking daily, if you're physically fit, physically active, and if you're in a place right now that you're not, like I definitely have a long way to go, take steps to get your health back to the point that you can. Make sure that you are doing those things. You also want to keep up with your hygiene. Imagine if your power went out and you hadn't taken a shower. Imagine if, everyone in your family, it's, like it's time for you to take a shower and then you have no water. So definitely you want to go into situations. So make sure that we have good hygiene, good health, hydration, and all of those things. Number 4 is to keep and carry cash. Along with that, I'm saying stay out of debt, because debt only makes things worse. So if you max out your credit cards every month and then you lose your job, that's a problem, right? So you want to make sure you try to chisel away at that debt until you get it under control, and to keep and carry some cash. I know that there were times, when the power went out at a restaurant and people were paying in cash. There have been times where it's like cash only. The machines are down. Now, sometimes the machines are down and they're like, oh, we're going to close the building then. It's like, because people can't actually use a calculator and figure out how much things cost and so forth. So keep and carry some cash on you. Small bills, definitely the smaller bills, the better. Ones, fives, tens. If you have to buy something that costs $5 and all you have is a 20, then you just gave them extra $15. So, small bills, also some change. If you're in a location and you're thirsty or hungry and there's a vending machine, and a lot of times the dollar bill thing won't always take the dollar bills. For some reason, I find that to be true. Make sure you have quarters, dimes, nickels, even occasionally pennies. But definitely you want to keep some change. Not a lot that's super heavy, but you definitely want to keep a handful of change in your wallet, purse, or coin purse, in your car. Definitely that is a good idea. Yeah, definitely. Because a lot of situations, if something was first starting to happen, you're not going to smash open a vending machine. That's destruction of property, that's vandalism. And if you had some coins, that would definitely be beneficial to you. And that was number 4, keep and carry cash and get out of debt. Number 5 is gardening. And I'm saying gardening because it's very mainstream. It's a very mainstream prep. It will not necessarily I've been gardening for many, many years. Even in high school, I was in 4-H and like elementary, middle school, FFA in high school. For a while as a child, for a couple years, I lived on a farm. And I've been gardening, edible landscaping, food forest type stuff for decades now. And I'll tell you, it would be very hard for you to feed your family on just your garden. However, if gardening is not one of your preps, then you have a gap in your skill set that really needs to be addressed as soon as possible. It takes many years for fruit trees and nut trees to become mature, and the first couple years they might give you a little bit of fruit, and then gradually more and more and more, and then eventually less and less and less until they die. So, but it can last you decades. Some nut trees can live 50 years, 100 years, longer than that. So really, when you're planting fruit and nut trees, you are planting a legacy that's going to help your children, the person who purchases your property in the future, and just people in general, and even wildlife. You definitely need to have a garden. You need to grow as many perennials as you possibly can because they grow themselves. Like I don't have to water most of, except for the first couple of years. I'm really not having to do anything for my fruit and nut trees. And that is a really big investment. Also, when I first purchased my trees, I got great deals. And now they're like 3 times the price they were when I bought them. And once you have established plants, you can actually propagate cuttings and make more. You have to be careful about patented varieties. But you can make more from what you have. So there are cheaper ways to get that going. Definitely make friends, talk to people. If you have, let's say you have a hazelnut tree, somebody else has a fig tree, you can exchange cuttings and root those cuttings, and now you both have both kinds of trees. So definitely gardening. It's a mainstream prep. People won't even know you're a prepper. And you don't even have to be a prepper to do this, and it will definitely help you. Definitely try to interplant with ornamentals and gray man crops, because if you look like the only house, and mine, I've made the mistake already. My property is the only one in my at least a couple blocks that has just tons of food growing. But you can start with growing a perimeter around your property of hazelnut trees, especially if you're in the Pacific Northwest. Definitely recommend hazelnut trees. You can have a perimeter around your garden. A couple fruit trees doesn't draw too much attention. You can grow sunflowers. Sunflowers are a great gray man's crop because it looks very ornamental. You can also grow sunchokes. People might be looking at those sunchokes going, eventually they're going to have sunflower seeds, right? They might even try to pick the flowers off of it. They're tiny little flowers. They're very just like barely ornamental. They might not understand that there's sunchokes tubers in the ground. They might eat a bunch of them, dig them up and eat a bunch, get really sick and go, oh no, that's not edible, not realizing you eat that in moderation. Hostas are edible when they're first emerging. A lot of people wouldn't even recognize asparagus. They see that ferny foliage and think it's an ornamental. So especially if you interplant some ornamentals in between, you might even plant some things that are very not edible, because somebody might look around going, I don't know if that's food, because that is definitely not food. So interplanting, you're not trying to make somebody sick or anything like that, but you might have, just really pretty things mixed in with your foods. A lot of people grow ornamental cabbages and things like that. You could definitely weave things in around the landscaping, and I'll do more of that in other videos. But definitely gardening, and it takes a while to get good at it. When you first start gardening, you make a lot of mistakes. You can read as much as you want to read. You can binge watch YouTube gardening channels and Grayman Crops and SHTF Gardens and Secret Gardens and Victory Gardens as much as you want. But in the first couple of years, you're going to have successes. You might get lucky and have a couple of really good years, and then all of a sudden make a bunch of mistakes. So you definitely need to start gardening if you haven't already. And you can also do some houseplants too. Mix it up a little bit. There are even some plants that would be good to grow indoors, like ginger, taro, and I'm sure there are others, even like airplane plants or spider plants. There are portions of them that are edible. Longevity, like there's like a root part of it. I have never eaten it, but I did some research. So just do some research. There might be some ways to hide growing food in your home. Also, sprouting and microgreens are great. You can even do those sprouts or microgreens for your chickens. So number 6 on my list is backyard hens. If you have a community agreement, which those I really tried to avoid. I would definitely not have bought a house that had such an agreement. But backyard hens are amazing. Now I will warn you, when you buy the chicks, if you buy them from like Tractor Supply and they say that they are sexed, it's about a 90% chance that any one of them is a hen. But like, we purchased our chicks back in 2020, and one of them was a rooster, and we ended up having to rehome him, which ended up him becoming soup, which was very, very sad. But we couldn't risk it. We found out that a neighboring city, a person had a rooster, and they were charged $10,000 for having a rooster in the city. So make sure that you know your local ordinances. If you're part of an HOA, make sure you know the rules. But most areas allow you to have 5 or more hens. I think here it's like 5. 5 is the average max for a small property, and then 10 is the maximum for any property in my county or in my city, as long as they're all hens and they have to have a certain size coop, and it can't be a permanent structure, and you have to have like rotation systems so it won't attract pests and things like that. And you might have to prove it should anybody report you for not meeting those expectations. But having backyard hens is a fabulous prep. It's something that could be just a normal part of your daily life. Having farm fresh eggs, backyard hen eggs, there's no comparison. And when people were talking about the price of eggs, I was like, well, the thing is, you're not really saving money by having backyard hens. You have to do first of all, there's like a lot of front end costs when you first get the chicks, and it costs to maintain them. And the life expectancy isn't too old. They really start to lay eggs around 5 or 6 months, and then they grow. They lay a lot of eggs in the spring and summer when the daylight is longer, and they barely lay any in the late fall, and almost none or none in the wintertime. It's a time for them to rest and recuperate. So lots of things to think about. I will do more on backyard hens. And I would recommend that you grow some of their food. Now, you should not expect to be able to give them all food from your garden, because you will not be able to grow enough for them. However, supplementing their feed with some of the cabbage leaves or the outside parts of the cauliflower leaves, when you're harvesting, there are a lot of things that they can eat, and it definitely keeps them interested, having a good life. You can grow sunflowers and give them the whole sunflower head. There are a lot of wonderful things. You can even feed them dandelion greens and flowers, and wormy fruits that you have. Make sure you check things though, but there's some things you should not give them. Do your own research on what to feed them, but you can feed them a lot of your kitchen scraps and a lot of your garden weeds and scraps. So, but be aware that there are toxic parts of plants. Number 7, I would highly recommend, and it makes me sad to say this, because having pets might give you a longevity of life from loneliness and mental well-being and emotions and things like that. But if you lose your job and you can't afford food for your kids, then you probably can't afford the $80 bag of dog food. I can't believe it. I was looking at dog food and I had to downgrade the brand that I wanted to go with, because it's always been twice as expensive, but it used to be like $40 and the regular brand was like $20. Now it's $40 for the regular brand and $80 for the fancy brand. So that's a lot of money. And so if you're thinking about especially larger dogs, and then cats, you have, the cat litter and you have the cat food, and then you also have vet bills. And I always get roped into those plans where it's like you pay $50 a month, which now is $70 or $80 a month for Banfield plans for a puppy or a dog. So I would highly recommend that you don't get pets, or that you don't get any new pets. Chickens, I wouldn't consider a pet, because they're actually producing food for you, and also manure. That has to be aged before you can use it though. But for dogs, I can tell you right now that, and I'm not going to get rid of them, but my daughter's puppies have been tearing up my garden. They are so naughty, and we've tried training them and so forth. Like the older 2 dogs are really good, but the 2 puppies, they're just, one's 1.5 years and one's like 7 months old, and they are ruining my garden. And so if shtf happened and I had a bunch of food growing and they ruined that would be a heartbreaking decision of what you would need to do if your dogs were preventing you from having food. Also, when I lived in Alaska, we used to have grizzly bear alerts when we were on the fort, and I remember they would always say, bring your dogs in. The dogs can bark and draw the grizzlies to you. So what the dogs would do is they run out, even at campsites, they would run out, bark at the grizzlies, and then run back to you. And so they're not really saving you from the bears, they were bringing danger to you. So if even in a situation where it was people, if people see a well-fed dog and they follow it back to where it goes back home, you're drawing attention to you. Also, the barking draws attention to you. So, and then you always have to deal with their waste. So if shtf really hit the fan, you still have all their waste to deal with besides your own. So pets are a big deal. And then also, like, if you didn't have enough to take care of them, watching them suffer and watching your kids watching them suffer, that would be really bad for your emotional state of mind. So don't get new pets. Now, if you're trying to prep. If you have no pets, and you're like, oh, I just need to have something, get a feeder fish. They're so easy. One thing of a large thing of, their food can feed them for years. We have 2 feeder fish in a 10-gallon aquarium, and they don't even have a working pump or filter, and they're totally fine. I take scoops of water out, pour them on plants. I use that as fishy fertilizer, and it's awesome. So if you have to have some kind of pet, it should be something very low scale. We even had lizards before, and you'd have to go buy crickets. Sometimes the crickets wouldn't be in stock, and then you'd have to go dig around your yard, see if you can find a bug. You can't waste time in shtf. You can't have a fancy, demanding pet on top of all of that. Number 8 is to rotate your food and other supplies. Make sure you have a rotation system. You're having the oldest front and center all the time. It's not what should we eat for dinner. It should be what is in line to be used. Instead of always about impulse and convenience. You need to get super organized. You don't want to waste. You don't want to rebuy things that you already have because you can't find them. Make sure you have a rotation system for your fridge, freezer, pantry, and so forth. And stop buying food that your family won't eat. If you don't use it and you throw it away, that is something that somebody else could have gotten. It is actually adding to the supply and demand problems. So don't buy stuff that you don't like. Number 9, women especially. If you I'm sure you've all heard of go bags and bug out bags and things like that. Use your purse as an improvised mini bug out bag. You have your normal stuff in there, but you also keep in some items like some, lighters, portable flashlights, a little bit of cash. Even your compact of your mirror can be a signaling device with emergency whistles, things like that. There's lots of small gadgets. We're going to do a separate video on using purses as bug out bags. And definitely, it's really something that's handy. It does mean you're carrying a larger bag around, but honestly, it's very, very helpful. So purses as bug out bags will be especially great. And for men, you can use fanny packs or, even like little backpacks that are more urban setting, blend in, not these giant bags. Number 10, this is for everybody. Live a good life. Do not live in fear. Enjoy the moments. Spend time with loved ones. You will regret, if SHTF happens, you will regret that you didn't take a vacation. You will regret that you didn't do all these special things when you had a chance to. I know that when COVID hit and we couldn't leave the house for a year, I really regretted that we had planned on going on a vacation to California the previous summer and we didn't go. I really regretted that because then we couldn't go, and we haven't gone ever since. So take advantage of it. I know that's controversial because a lot of preppers are going to say, don't ever stop prepping. You need to spend every minute prepping. Like, no, you need to live a good life now. Do not live in fear. Prepare for tomorrow. Like, it's like an insurance plan, right? You're not planning on dying. You're not planning on having to leave that money to somebody. You're not planning on getting cancer, but you still have health insurance. You still have life insurance. You have car insurance. You're not trying to get into a car accident. Live a good life. Do the things that you want to do. But hopefully some of these 10 things will be on your list. You'll start trying some of these things out. Maybe go a little bit deeper in depth on some of them. And I'll definitely share more on these ideas at a later time. Hopefully some of these 10 suggestions have come in handy. You want to hit the ground running. You do not want to be caught unprepared. God bless you, and I'll see you on the next video. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and comment below.